challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, and
It's Labor Day.
it's Labor Day, and therefore special edition of the live stream. So everybody, pencils down. Whatever you're doing, preparing your barbecue for today. Forget about it. Just focus on this, and just maximum attention.
Yeah,
So
well, this is what happened to me. See, it's 5 o'clock p.m. my time, and knowing that we were going to do this around 3 o'clock, I thought, well, I better brush up on what's going on in the world. And then I'm like, oh, nobody updated their website today. What's going? It's Labor Day in the United
yes,
States.
yeah, it's. But of course, as far as I know, the United States is the only country in the world that celebrates Labor Day as the day celebrating going back to work. I mean, it's like everywhere else, Labor Day is May the 1st. It's a a freedom from labor, but here they're actually celebrating going back to work.
Yeah, but a lot of the world, the Western world at least, even though they don't celebrate the American Labor Day, they do. Well, the Americans are not working today, so why should we work? Because they're not working, we don't have to work. It's all over the place. Oh, it's Labor Day in America. We don't
Well, so it's a holiday.
we don't have to work. There's Labor Day in America.
An extra day of holiday. Yeah,
It's true, George. It's true. Look at it. Look at news. If you're at Asia Times or something, like, oh, Labor Day, who cares about it? But the French and the Swiss and the Norwegian, oh, it's Labor Day in America. Let's stay home.
Yes, that's right. I guess that's the case. I mean, like if you have when Memorial Day comes around as well in the United States, which is the last Friday in May, or the last Friday before the last Monday in May. Then I guess the rest of the world says, well, hey, I mean, everybody's on holiday, so that's a holiday.
And nobody knows what Memorial Day is about, but it's Memorial Day.
Exactly. So there's a few things to discuss today. There's an article in the Washington Post outlining this plan for Gaza. Apparently there are people in the White House talking about Gaza, creating this wonderful beachfront properties and investment opportunities in Gaza. So just want to take it's so utterly
You're not
ridiculous.
sure that Kurt Vonnegut didn't write this article? Okay. I hope everybody knows who he is. Okay.
Yes, that's right. But the strange thing is, let me just find this. Yes, here we go.
Well, there's nothing like the Washington Post to lighten your day. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so here, I think this should be it. So yeah, so this is because of course this is the way Trump thinks of international affairs. So here's this this picture. This is a PowerPoint presentation, I guess. So this is the Great Trust, from a demolished Iranian proxy to a prosperous Abrahamic ally. They use this word Abrahamic quite a lot in this PowerPoint presentation.
And looking at the image in front of us here, I don't see any Palestinians. Do you?
No, I don't think there'll be room for them. I mean, I guess you could buy your way back in. So it's like well, if you want to, have an apartment in this some fancy complex that they're going to build, yeah, sure, you can have it, but it's going to cost you $1 million. Do you have the money for that, or could you put down a deposit? So that's once you're gone, you're not going to be able to afford to go back.
I think there would be some redlining, George. I'm sorry.
Yes, and so here's this. Great stands for, I mean, you thought it was just, hey, because it's great, like Trump's favorite word, but no, it's the Gaza reconstitution, economic acceleration, and transformation trust will fundamentally transform Gaza and integrate it into the Abrahamic fabric and the broader IMEC initiative. IMEC initiative is this fancy thing starting from India, kind of
Well,
a
this is
big
kind of like a
transport
Lebensborn.
investment corridor.
This is Lebensborn, right?
Yes, that's right. And then the US led multilateral custodianship. So the US will lead a custodianship, leading to a reformed Palestinian self governance. I don't know. I still don't get the Palestinian part. I mean, it's going to be a US led multilateral custodianship. It can start as a US Israel bilateral agreement, taking control from Israel to the US once Hamas is disarmed, and evolve to a formal multilateral trusteeship.
What is the United States' legal standing in
I don't
taking
think
over?
it has. I mean, from what I can, discern, they seem to think that Israel has legal standing, and then, but when I tried to figure out on what basis does Israel have a legal standing, they said, well, because it's there. And therefore, it's, according to international laws, they interpret it, well, whoever owns something, whoever possesses it, well, basically he possesses it. So it's there, he has legal standing. That's the
But
sum and
that
substance of
same,
the
but
argument.
that
It's
same
not any more
legal,
complicated than that.
but that same legal argument means that they have to meet the basic needs of the population that lives there, because that's another form of just occupation. They will not use that word, but it is
No.
occupation. And
Yes.
under international law, the people that are being occupied are owed housing, water,
Yep.
electricity,
Yeah.
food.
Yeah.
Basic needs have to be met. If,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
as
No, that is definitely a point. But so there's going to be a 70 to 100 billion dollars in public investment.
I wonder where that's going to come from.
Yeah, that's another thing. That's all. It's
Not
less.
going to come from Israel.
Not good. No, no, it's not. But the strange thing is, I mean, I think, but Trump is also claiming that it's not going to come from the U.S. government. And here's another map: a thriving Gaza, the crossroads of a new Abrahamic architecture. Um, and then here we have this Gaza 2035 regional vision, the IMEX bridge to the Mediterranean. God, all these real estate people are supposedly drooling at this prospect. And then here we have reimagining Gaza 10 mega projects. So we'll have a Gaza infra rebuild, the Abraham Gateway, the MBS ring. This is the pave the MBS ring highway and tram around Gaza. And
A
then
real slop to the Saudis, huh?
yes,
Yeah.
that's right. A Gaza port and airport, regional water hub, the Elon Musk smart manufacturing zone,
God, this is absurd.
the Gaza Trump Riviera and islands. And
No,
then this,
George, you made this up. You had time on your hands today, and you made this up.
I wish I could say that, but I don't
see
have the
your humor.
sophistication.
I see your humor all over this. Okay.
Yeah, I wish I had the sophistication to put something like this together. Unfortunately, I don't. And then here's the Washington Post article. It says the Gaza post-war plan envisions voluntary relocation of entire population. At least they put the
Yeah,
voluntary
I mean, I
quotes.
think we really need to have some kind of societal summit about using quotation marks, because I think we need something more uniform. Okay, this
Yes,
is getting very footloose
very footloose. Yeah,
with footloose with quotation marks.
footloose and fancy free. Yeah.
And then there's the one, the two hook. There's a hook on each side, and then there's the double hook. We need to have a discussion about this as well.
That's right. So the sub is the Trump administration and international partners are discussing proposal to build another quote, a Riviera of the Middle East on the rubble of Gaza. One would establish U.S. control and pay Palestinians to leave. There was still a question about where they're going to go, but even if you give them whatever $25,000, and assuming any of them take it, they're still going to go somewhere.
Well, I
25,000.
mean,
There's
also
only a limit to how much it can take you.
yeah, but there's a problem there as well because if you listen to mainstream media, um, uh, is the English language in Israel all the way across into Europe, into America, all Palestinians are Hamas. So what people want to take in Hamas?
That's a very good point. Yeah, I don't, that's going to be
There are no innocents there, George. Okay,
that's a very good
I
point.
mean these people they trip over their lies and their deceit and and logic never plays a role because this is just pure racism.
Yeah. So here's a post-war plan for Gaza circulating within the Trump administration. You know, you think it's circulating. Every time I hear the word circulating, I get this picture of Dr. Sebastian Gorka
Yeah, well, you know what he is.
circulating plans.
Sebastian Gorka. He has these printouts, and he's circulating around the West Wing. Hey, I want you to take a look at this here. Hey, take this to your wife. Okay,
That's
I
right.
know your uncle is a rich financier. He might be interested in the. He
Yes.
just circulates around the West Wing.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. I'm sure because I can't see that he has much to do. I mean, I just I don't think he's in the inner circle of policymakers. So I guess he just has a lot of time on his hands.
Maybe he should work with Tammy Bruce. He needs work.
Yes, a post-war plan for Gaza circulating within the Trump model on Donald Trump's vow to take over the enclave would turn it into a trusteeship administered by the United States for at least 10 years, while it is transformed into a gleaming tourism resort and high-tech manufacturing and technology hub.
Why can't that happen in America somewhere?
Yeah, it'd be nice. Yeah, well, it's a gleaming tourism resort and high-tech manufacturing hub. The 38-page prospectus seen by the Washington Post envisions at least a temporary relocation of all of Gaza's more than 2 million population. This is temporary. And then, because when you want to try to get back in, they say, hey, have you got $1 million to spare? Because nothing's for free, buddy. Either through what he calls, quote, voluntary, unquote, departures to another country, or into restricted, secured zones inside the enclave during reconstruction.
Oh, so just a smaller but more intense open air
Open air
concentration.
prison, but I don't know. It's going to be difficult for people to start building a kind of Riviera on the Mediterranean. There, if people they look out of the window and then they see this outdoor prison. I mean, I don't think that's exactly what tourists want to look at. And It says those who own land would be offered a digital token by the trust in exchange for rights to redevelop their property, to be used to finance a new life elsewhere, or eventually redeem for an apartment in one of the six to eight new AI-powered smart cities to be built in Gaza.
I think it'll be easier to sell them the Brooklyn Bridge, but go ahead,
So
George.
you give somebody a token. Oh, here's your token. Now, thank you. Now we're going to use your property and build whatever it is we're going to build there. And then you can go live somewhere else, wherever someone's going to have you. I don't think anyone is going to have you, but if somewhere else, or it eventually redeemed for an apartment in one of the 6 to 8 AI-powered smart cities. But they're not going to get that because they're going to say, "Hey, the piece of land you gave me is worth nothing. I mean, it's all rubble. It's worth nothing. So you're not going to use that token to get yourself $1 million apartment. I mean, that's an absurdity. So it's this token isn't going to get you anything. Um, each Palestinian who chooses to leave would be given a 5,000. Oh, that's only 5,000. I thought I thought it would be a little more generous than that. A $5,000 cash payment and subsidies to cover 4 years of rent elsewhere. Subsidies. So we don't even know. It's not to cover 4 years of rent, just subsidies to cover 4 years of rent. How extensive is the subsidy? As well as a year of food. Okay. What happens after the year is over?
Well, I
Um,
mean, you already mentioned it twice. I mean, is this going to happen where in Iceland, in New Jersey?
well, I
Uh,
didn't think so. I mean, because I mean, no one's going to take them in. I mean, the only possibility is if the United States holds some kind of a leverage over a particular country. Now, let's say Kosovo. Now, Kosovo might agree, but Kosovo will want something in exchange. So you have to then deliver something like international recognition, UN membership, NATO membership, something they're going to want, or get the Serbs to give up on in any kind of sovereignty over Kosovo. They're going to want something. They're not going to just say, "Hey, yeah, sure, we'll have some Palestinians here." Um, or you got something like Somaliland. Now, Somaliland, no one recognizes Somaliland. They would like to be recognized. The United States could say, okay, we'll recognize Somaliland. You're going to take some Palestinians. But these are very poor countries. I mean, I don't know how they're going to
I
handle.
suppose Ukraine could be on the list.
Ukraine would certainly be on the list, and Zelensky would certainly say, okay, but we want something in return. I mean, we're not, nothing's for free. um, let's just a little more here, and here is this is called the Gaza reconstitution, economic blah blah. The proposal was developed by some of the same Israelis who created and set in motion the U.S. and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation.
Wow.
Well, who'd
See
have
how
thought?
that's worked out. Yeah.
Well, that's surprising. Now distributing food inside the enclave. Oh, it's distributing food. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I've never heard that. Okay, they're distributing food. I've heard a lot of other things that's going on, but
That's right.
I didn't know that was also what they were doing. Okay.
That's right. And then financial planning was done by a team working at the time for the
You know,
Boston.
I'm actually shocked that the Boston Consulting Group even has their fingerprints on this because they had a pretty good reputation. It's trashed forever right now.
Right. 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 But there's still a real question, where is the money going to come from? Because investors aren't going to just piss away millions and millions of dollars. That's not what they do. So somebody has to guarantee this money.
Well, also going back to my first question, I mean, you're buying. Are you the owner of the property that you're selling? I mean, and the smart money is going to say, "There's an ownership issue here, right?" You know, it's called escrow. Everybody, I
Right,
mean,
right, right. No, I think it's a very good point. And that's why you can see they're talking here about this token. So they're going to dig up some Palestinian owner and say, "Here, here's a token," and then we're going to take over this land and we're going to build whatever it is on this land. But so I think in those cases, but there must be also all sorts of. I mean, it's all rubble now. I mean, how are they going to establish who owns what underneath all that rubble? Um, Perhaps most appealing, it purports to require no U.S. government funding. This is such rubbish. The idea that you can do this without U.S. government funding is absolute nonsense. One way or the other, the United States is going to be funding this. Whether
at the very least,
loan guarantees is going to be funded.
you just took the two words, loan guarantees.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And offer significant profit to investors. Unlike the controversy.
I'd like to see how they think this is going to turn a profit. Okay,
Right, exactly.
oh, everybody, it's never going to happen. Okay,
No, I don't think it's going to happen either.
never.
One of the reasons why it isn't going to happen is the Palestinians aren't going to take the money. They're not going to take $5,000, and they're not going to take this token. Unlike the controversial and sometimes cash-strapped Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which uses armed private U.S. security contractors to distribute food in 4 southern Gaza locations, the trust plan does not rely on donations. Instead, it would be financed by public and private sector investment in what it calls mega projects, from electric vehicle plants and data centers to beach resorts and high-rise apartments. Now, they're also talking here about somehow MBS and Qatar are going to be involved. They're not going to be involved in this. I mean, they've already made clear that the minimum for them to be involved in anything like the Abraham Accords is there has to be a Palestinian state there.
Yeah,
This is
have a
not a Palestinian
Palestinian
state.
state, have a recognized Palestinian state, and it will be open to for business. Okay, with the people that are there.
Right,
Okay, that might work. That might work.
right,
Barring Israel mowing the grass from time to time. Okay,
right.
I mean this is complete. Like I said, Kurt Vonnegut would pass on this one.
Yes, yes, that's right. And now, yeah, one other thing I wanted to talk about is our good friend Chancellor Schmerz. It's very interesting. I mean, is he a worse chancellor than his predecessor? I've already forgotten the name of his predecessor. Oh, Sergeant Schultz. He was so
Well,
non-democratic. I've
don't
already
forget.
forgotten.
Well, Hitler is also a predecessor.
Well,
Okay.
exactly, but we can say you've got that, you've got the benchmark. All right, you're not going to be a worse chancellor than uh, Hitler. So therefore,
What an
we're not number
amazing
two. It's the number
what an
two worst
amazing
chancellor.
handicap to be given. Okay, well, at least you're not as bad as Hitler.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly. That's right. At least I'm not as bad as it. I'm
Fred,
not the worst
relax,
chancellor in
relax,
history.
Fred. Man, people hate you. Nobody in Germany likes you. Everyone thinks you're a joke in the world. But don't worry, you're not worse than Adolf Hitler. Come
Exactly.
on.
You are not the worst chancellor in German history. Um, so he was in. So he's going around ranting and raving, and he said, that Putin is on. Yeah, I quite agree with Macron. Putin is an ogre. And so he gave this interview in Toulon when he went to this meeting, this Council of Ministers meeting, French, German. They have these regular meetings, um, and he gave an interview just before the meeting, during which he said, essentially, we are at war with Russia.
Yeah.
Never looks good. Never. I mean, that was Annalena Baerbock had said this, and then she said, "No, I didn't say it." Even it's on YouTube what she said. But here he gave this interview, and let's take a look what he says here. And here's this. He says Europe faces a prolonged confrontation with Russia. NATO remains the anchor. And then Merz linked Russia's war to wider pressure on European institutions. Russia has attacked the second largest country in Europe in terms of territory, he said, of Ukraine. Referring to Russian President Vladimir Putin's stated aims, he said, when one listens to Putin and examines his doctrine, it is clear he wants to restore the old Soviet Union in territorial terms. Right? But territorial terms. So he intends, Putin, according to Merz, wants to restore the 15 Republic
Well,
USSR.
why don't
That's
we
quite
go a
enough
little?
goal.
Let's go a little further. Let's look at the old geographical borders of the DDR. Do you want to go back to the DDR? That would be a serious referendum. That'd be serious business, George. Okay. Now, look, that first paragraph. You know what it says, George? This is the European, up-to-date, new version, recent iteration of Russiagate. Right there.
That's right. Yes.
Russiagate.
All right.
The European version, the
Right.
Netflix European version of Russiagate.
Right.
Because what he says here is complete. I mean, it's fantasy. There's
Right.
no evidence here whatsoever. And actually, if it was, and George and I have gone over this terrain many, many times. It's not even true for Ukraine, let alone
No, it isn't true.
the former republics of the Soviet Union. It doesn't even apply to Ukraine.
Right, right. But I think it's part of the ideological mobilization
Exactly.
Macron and he and this guy Alexander Stubb, the Finnish president, who likened Russia to the Huns. He actually said that. He likened them to the Huns. Um, And then the Finnish foreign minister said the other day that Russia was a cancer. It was a cancer. So this kind of extreme language, it's never a good sign.
Nope.
But it just shows the extent of this ideological mobilization going on.
But how, one of the things that I've been saying since 2016 is, how do you walk back these statements,
You
George?
can't. You
You
can't.
can't.
And I have no intention of walking them back. Yeah. Um, he said the confrontation already taking place across multiple domains. Every day he, being Putin, he attacks our infrastructure and
Oh,
tries.
what infrastructure? Who blew up the Nord Stream?
That's a good question. A
Did Russia do
question that,
that?
yeah, yeah. Well, that's a very interesting because according to the German authorities, it's Ukraine blew up the Nord Stream. That's the claim of the German authorities that Merz.
Okay, then Article 5.
That's right. So why are you aligned with Ukraine that blows up your infrastructure? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, you're making this claim. Ukraine blew up your infrastructure, and Ukraine is your dear good ally. Um, and then he says, Merz said, citing German intelligence assessments, we are already in a conflict with Russia. He argued the objective is not a reaction to NATO, but a challenge to democratic systems. Putin does not feel threatened by NATO. He feels threatened by the strength of democracy, of freedom.
Oh, the Michael McFaul argument.
That's
There
right,
we go.
but I'm puzzled. So which is it? He wants to restore the USSR because he has these imperial ambitions or nostalgia or whatever, or he's threatened by democracy and freedom. I don't. These are two separate arguments.
Well, I'm sure he's not challenged on it. So
No.
it passes. Okay.
Yes. And then he says Merz placed the Franco-German relationship at the center of Europe's response. He had been invited, for consultations with President Emmanuel Macron, and said Europe will only advance if France and Germany work closely together. Together, we are the engine of Europe. And
Maloney doesn't like hearing that.
well, no, I don't think any
She's
European. I
a
mean, especially
blonde woman. They're always slighting her because she's a little blonde woman that rolls her eyes. Okay, these chauvinists, I'll
that's
tell
right. And she doesn't like either of them.
you. Good for her.
That's right. Um, and then he says, and then there were
No,
four
I'm
stars.
serious, everybody. They always slight the Italians,
Yes, they
Okay,
do. They
right.
do.
Italy, it's like a boot. Everybody knows its geography. Well, the northern half, they got their act together. Okay, they have
Right.
for a long time. The southern part,
Right.
okay.
No.
They're the ones that left for America and all of that, and we have the Godfather as a result. But you look at the people, and they didn't immigrate; they stayed, they worked. Okay.
Italy it's a serious economy. It's a big economy. It's up there with the big three European economies. And then this goes on and said Merz stated that NATO remains the core of German and European security. Asked who protects Germany today, he replied NATO, the United States, of course, France as well. He said Berlin intends to maintain good cooperation and so on, including reliance on the U.S. nuclear umbrella. But notice how Germany has to be defended against whom?
Yeah, well, for the entire history of Germany, everybody has to be protected from it. But
That's right.
I go down history lane. I'm sorry.
That's right. He confirmed that discussions of European nuclear deterrence with France is possible.
Oh,
Those
now
countries-
we're talking about nuclear deterrence.
That's
Here
right.
we go.
That's
Here we
right.
go. Okay, there we go. That's he just climbed the escalation ladder so
That's
easily.
right. But of course, it's all nonsense, and we've talked about this before. Because of course, France would have to drastically change this nuclear doctrine if it were to extend its nuclear umbrella to Germany. Because France's nuclear doctrine is that it only uses its nuclear weapons if France and France alone is under threat. It cannot extend any kind of a nuclear umbrella to anyone else. That's France's nuclear doctrines. So France would have to change that. And I don't think there's any support at all in France, zero,
Well,
for
anybody with
extending a
any
nuclear umbrella to anyone else.
and anybody with any horse sense in Washington will say, "Your Article 5. It's among yourselves. It's among
That's right.
yourselves." Okay,
That's right.
if you're talking about using nuclear weapons on the European continent,
Right.
that is your affair,
Right.
and don't bother us. Okay, I'm
Right.
serious.
Right.
It's very serious.
Yes. And then he added that a broader conversation on deterrence also involves the United Kingdom. For now, he said, he does not seek to alter NATO's configuration, but wants Europeans to put our own security on European soil to the fore and talk about it more. So, yeah, he wants to
Well, I
talk
mean,
about
what
it.
is it, George? Is it European self-defense or is it NATO? What is it?
Well, it's very difficult to say. I mean, it's that, the Europeans have been fretting for decades about the possibility that the United States is going to abandon them. This is an ongoing thing. It goes all the way back to the 1950s, and they constantly think, "Oh, what are we going to do if the Americans abandon us?" Americans aren't going to abandon Europe. Um,
Eisenhower wanted to.
of course they did. I mean, they've always they kind of talked about this and so on, but it never happens. The Americans vaguely issue threats, but nothing ever happens. And they've always, every time there's a new president, they think, oh, this president is an isolationist. He's not really interested in us Europeans. They said this about Reagan. They said, oh, Reagan's a Californian. He's into the Pacific. He's not interested in us. They said this about Bill Clinton. Oh, he's from Arkansas. He's just an American boy. He's not interested in us. And of course they said this about Trump, but it never happens. It's not going to happen. NATO is just too valuable for the United States to abandon, but they want the Europeans to cough up a lot more money. I mean, there's no question about that. Anyway, here it says Merz connected outcomes in Ukraine to behavior elsewhere, including in Asia. While declining direct comparisons, he said China's posture is becoming more assertive around Taiwan and in the South China Seas.
Well, okay, how do those two sentences go together?
I don't.
Um,
I don't.
they are contradictory. Merz connected outcomes in Ukraine to behavior elsewhere, including declining direct comparison.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but also you have to think. What do you care about Taiwan? I mean, it's like he's, the Merz is sitting there in Toulon, fretting about Taiwan. I mean, even if China were a threat to Taiwan, and there's no evidence that it is a threat, it's intending to use any kind of force. But even if it did, how does it in any way affect Germany? I mean, you're nowhere near Taiwan. If Ukraine falls, it will encourage countries like China to be even more aggressive. For example, vis-a-vis Taiwan. And then,
well, I mean, I suppose if these fantasies of a Pacific NATO were to come into being, then there may be something to it. But there is no.
Well, that's right. I mean, if you do create,
if Ukraine fall, what do you mean falls? Can you define fall? I mean, they're going to lose.
Well,
they fall. Right. I don't know. What is that supposed to mean?
I guess he means,
God forbid peace happens.
Yes, exactly. But
if peace comes to Ukraine,
right,
Taiwan.
I think that's right. He said, in other words, if Russia wins, if Russia gets what he wants, then these terrible things will happen. But the problem is, you pointed out what the issue is, because if you do start NATO expansion into Asia, if that's the goal, then you are going to bring about that very crisis, which is, China will then regard itself, we are under threat from this marauding rebellion.
It would be legitimate.
We have to act to defend ourselves.
And it would be legitimate. Look what happened with NATO encroachment in Europe.
Exactly.
Against Russia.
Exactly.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's a self-fulfilling. Absolutely, it is. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But he so where is his? So these are Schmerz's prophecies, and then it goes on about rule of law and so on, and then he says Merz also added information operations and domestic politics. He has to address domestic politics because he's historically unpopular. There's never been a chancellor who has been as unpopular as Merz is, which is quite a stunning record because he's only been in power really just a few months, but it's record low. Even Sergeant Schultz was never as unpopular as Merz is. Um, so he naturally has to address the domestic issue. He said there is at least one party in the Bundestag very close to Putin,
Okay.
with quite a few sympathizers, and characterized this as an issue for Germany's democratic debate. He distinguished between Russia's leadership and his people, expressing hope for good neighborly relations in the future, while stating that Europe will be dealing with an authoritarian regime for years. The funny thing is, when he says how he loves the Russian people, I am reminded, I mean, like you, I am reminded of the Nuremberg trial and Hermann Goering, who was kind of, having a good time, you know, arguing with the prosecutors. He said, "This is ridiculous that we ever wanted a war with Russia. We love Russia. We love the Russian people. I love Russian culture. We love Tolstoy. We love Dostoevsky. We love Tchaikovsky. It's ridiculous that anyone should accuse us of wanting a war with Russia." He said that. That's exactly what Goering said. And so Schmerz says, "Oh yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
but don't you see here the poverty of his argument is that this is just going back to Biden's democracies versus
yes,
authoritarianism. I mean, it doesn't cut
right,
any ice here, you guys. I mean, George and I are a firm believer in geopolitics, and geopolitics is it's ugly. I mean, that's the way
right,
it works. Okay,
right,
it
right.
has nothing to do with regime nature.
That,
Okay, I
yes,
mean, North Korea has nuclear weapons.
right.
Is it because they're communist? No, no, because they're threatened.
Yes,
Okay, I mean,
exactly.
George and I have talked endlessly about the origins of the Second World War as it goes to the Soviet Union. It doesn't matter if Stalin was in power or not. Any level-headed leader
Right.
of Russia, the Soviet Union, the Russian Federation would act
Would have acted exactly
remarkably
the same
similar.
way. That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. Would have done
And
exactly the
people
same
like
thing.
Merz, they can't do that. Okay,
Right.
they
Right.
can't do because it's there is this. It's a good guy versus the bad. We're the good
Right.
guys. They're the bad guys.
Right.
Okay, I
Yeah.
mean, who in history says, "Well, we're the bad guys and they're the good guys, but we still have to kill them"? It doesn't work that way.
It
It's
doesn't
God.
work like that. Exactly. Everybody is saying, "Yeah, we're defensive. We're trying to defend ourselves." They they're the offensive power. They're the aggressors always. Because and that is true. Everybody is trying to defend themselves. Hey, we're just being defensive. That's why NATO's proclamations, "Oh, we're a defensive alliance," and think that somebody's going to buy that. Well, you may consider yourself defensive. To others, you are a marauding, rapacious, predatory entity. Anyway, then he says Merz's message was that Europe should reinforce defense rapidly, keep NATO at the core, deepen Franco-German industrial and strategic cooperation, sustain Ukraine, and hold a careful dialogue with deterrence with France and the UK. The whole world is watching what we do to help Ukraine. And then he sent out this tweet and he says, "I'm preparing for a long war in Ukraine." Oh, good.
Okay.
We are trying to end. We are
Is
trying to.
he is he personally preparing?
It sounds like it.
It sounds like it.
We are trying to end it as quickly as possible.
No, they're prolonging it as long as possible.
That's right. Annalena Baerbock used to talk like that, and saying, "Oh, I'm working day and night to end this war, end it as quickly as possible, but not at the price of Ukraine's capitulation." Because then the country loses its independence. Then tomorrow it will be the next country, and the day after tomorrow it will be us. It will be us. So Germany, so Ukraine,
Well, you can
today
make the
Ukraine,
argument.
tomorrow Germany.
Well, but Germany has already lost its independence. Okay,
That's right.
it has very few foreign policy options because of the poison known as NATO.
But is that what he's saying? He's not talking about independence. Well, I mean, I guess that if you say loses independence, then tomorrow it'll be the next country, and the day after tomorrow. Is that what he means, or does he mean Russia will attack Germany? Because that's how I understood it, is meaning that, well, Russia will, prevail in Ukraine, and then it will attack Germany. No,
There's a little bit in between, isn't there? I
there is a
mean,
little bit in between, but then it'll be next, and then the Baltics, and then Poland, and then Germany.
well, that's what happened to Germany in the 1940s, right?
Right, right. Well, I
With
don't.
this country, with this country, and then
Exactly. I don't know. I don't know what I mean. It's like, well,
again, this is something George and I have genuine expertise in. Is that this is a historical motif or paradigm that's how they see the world. A German chancellor in 2025 apparently sees the world through Germany of the 1940s. Okay,
right.
that's a trap. That's a trap.
Well, that's right, but it's a very interesting that he wants to bring this up. So the suggestion that somehow, if Russia prevails in Ukraine, then Germany will be next. It's very hard to say on what basis. Now, if you wage a war, I mean, if Schmerz's plan, and I think there are plans within NATO to wage a war against Russia. I mean, if that's the plan, then again, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Something like that could happen. I mean, if that's your goal, if your goal is a prolonged war with Russia, then you're going to get a war with Russia.
I wouldn't say, you can say if that's the goal, fine. But what I would say, which makes it even worse, it's a choice.
No, it's a choice.
It's
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
choice.
That's right. But when he sends out a tweet like that, what was it? I foresee a long war with Russia. He's preparing for a war with Russia. I mean, he says it. I mean, there's no ambiguity. And then he says, well, if we let Ukraine fall, then it'll be us next. Those are
Okay, well, okay.
for a war.
Okay, then we're next. So, if you truly believe this, then isn't it incumbent upon the German Chancellor and other leaders in NATO countries that if it's inevitable war is going to come to them, so they should bring the war to Russia?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a logical deduction.
I think that's the logical conclusion, and I think that's what he has in mind. Oh, I don't know whether he has that directly in mind, but that's the clear implication of what he's saying. He sees a long war, and then he says, well, if Ukraine falls, essentially we are next, then means you are preparing for a war. And then, of course, if you are preparing for a war, then, Russia will also prepare for this war. I mean, what else is it going to do? Say, well, obviously, we're up against NATO, and therefore there will be a war, and they have to make preparations. So it's another self-fulfilling prophecy. If you want a war, you'll get a war. I mean, that's
also, to reiterate what I just said, is that if it's inevitable, then you should strike first.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think so.
It's inevitable, George.
If it's inevitable, and that's the point. That the moment one side or another thinks that the other is going to strike first, then that's the moment when you have to strike first. That's exactly what happened in World War I. I mean, you have to then make a preparation. Hey, you've got these military alliances. We have to move and move fast. Otherwise, they're going to move. So yeah, I think that's the implication of.
That is
comment.
Again, that's a choice.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing in Russian foreign policy behavior that would suggest that that's how Russia sees its security.
No.
There's no. I mean, if anyone has any evidence, please tell us. Okay, I'm not trying to be flippant here. Okay.
Right. That's right.
I mean, with Merz and Macron and the rest, they're extrapolating on data points that don't exist.
No, that's right. But that's right. They have made it. They have made Ukraine the condition of their security. In other words, says this is our condition for security. That if anything happens, if Ukraine loses, then this will be a defeat for us and some huge security disaster for us. They made that decision. So therefore, you have to think, okay, well, they're obviously preparing for war. I don't know how it's gonna how they're gonna do it and whatever, but we got a sense of this through Ursula von der Leyen.
Oh, it's in Bulgaria, right?
Yeah, yeah, she was. Yeah, I saw that, but there's something the GPS, Russian GPS that hit her plane, or somehow she had to
I mean,
land or whatever.
what I saw is that she didn't get a very warm welcome.
Oh, I didn't know that, but I didn't see that. I saw there was the this GPS, the alleged Russian GPS attack on her aircraft, and she had to land, had to make an emergency landing. But
Poor
that's,
thing.
yeah, poor thing.
Poor,
But anyway, so here, first of all, here's the that quote that I was talking about from Stub. I just like saying that name. I'm so happy
well,
to
if you weren't
Finland.
aware, you'd probably call him Stub. Okay, and it would probably be more appropriate because he has like truncated thinking. Okay.
Yes. So here, this was an article in the Wall Street Journal, and it says during the closed door meeting, Finnish President Alexander Stubb called the eastern Ukrainian cities of Kramatorsk and Slavyansk a bastion against the Huns.
Oh, I haven't heard that term in a long time.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
That's like Hogan Heroes lingo. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And of course,
So
Churchill.
I guess we can, they're the new Bosch.
Yeah, yeah. And then Churchill, of course, that coined that famous thing about the Hun is either at your feet or at your throat. So this is good. It's a bastion against the Huns. We have to keep the Huns out, because they're the barbarians. They're the barbarians at the gate. That does bring back, the good old days of the 1930s about the Russians as the barbarians at the gate.
We should consider rebranding the Hun report.
A description that appeared to impress Trump, according to officials.
Of course it did. Of course it did.
The Huns. And so here's Ursula von der Leyen, and she says Europe has pretty precise plan to send troops to Ukraine.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. I mean, even Politico, they run all these the coalition of the willing, they want to send troops and then go to the 5th to 18th paragraph. Well, this country isn't interested. Poland said no. Germany said no.
Right. No. Yes. Exactly.
I mean, maybe Montenegro wants to send its entire
I don't
military,
think.
which is smaller than the
No,
New York City police force.
No, I don't think so. Montenegrins have nothing against Russia, so they're not going to do it.
No, most of the people living in Montenegro have some connection with Russia.
But that's really the problem, because if you have the coalition of the willing, who's actually going to send troops? Well, you talk about France and you talk about Great Britain. I mean, I don't know. Maybe some of these Benelux countries, they seem to be quite demented.
I think Belgium might be on board.
Yeah, Belgium. Maybe the Dutch. Then and so maybe some Swedes and Finns would get on board. European capitals are working on pretty precise plans. I wonder, was she deliberately doing an alliteration there for potential?
I'm not sure. Is it like beautiful, pretty?
I don't know. Pretty precise. I guess it's pretty precise.
Is that English, or is that German? Or
well, I think she speaks English. I don't think she's speaking in German to the Financial Times. Her English is pretty good, even though she speaks with this awful accent. But I guess when she says pretty precise as opposed to moderately precise, which it's like when.
Well, I mean, okay, everyone, it's like unique. Okay, this is a little bit of an English lesson. You can say it's kind of unique.
Kind of unique, exactly.
You can't say that. I mean, it's unique or it's not
unique. Exactly.
Okay, so is it precise or not precise?
Exactly.
Or you can say, well, imprecise plans. Okay,
it's got to
precise.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, exactly. It's sort of, kind of precise. For potential military deployments in Ukraine as part of the post-conflict security guarantees that will have the full backing of U.S. capabilities. So she puts this in, the full backing of U.S. capabilities. So they're making all these plans. Trump has not said that he's going to have the full backing of U.S. capabilities. And we talked about this before. He's been quite vague about what he's going to provide, if anything. And then she said, there's a clear roadmap for possible deployments. The European Commission president told...
I don't believe a word that this woman says.
No, I don't either. Um, and then security guarantees are paramount and absolutely crucial. We have a clear roadmap, and we had an agreement in the White House, and this work is going forward very well. Well, they
This
didn't
is
really have an agreement in the White House. I mean, did they come out with any? There was no statement. There was no statement that what exactly they intended to do. They just had a meeting and they chatted about this and that, and then Trump left the meeting and then had a chat with Putin, and then he sent out some truths and said what a fantastic meeting it was, and he had a fantastic conversation with Putin, and that's it. I didn't see any agreement. Um, and then she says her remarks came amid planning for a meeting of European leaders this week, at which they are set to firm up national commitments to the Western force.
I think I can confirm this now. The domestic politics and economics of all of these countries is in the shitter so
Right.
much so that all they have to do is go to a meeting about Ukraine. I think that's. I'm sorry.
Well, it is very interesting because France, Germany, and the UK, I mean, certainly France and the UK are in quite serious economic difficulties. I mean, particularly France, where they're about to have another government's about to fall. They're unable to meet, I mean, they're trying to reduce the budget deficit, but that, of course, is very unpopular. And so that's why, the previous government fell because there's no support for these kinds of welfare cuts that would have necessary, but they're still determined to spend money on the military. And so Germany is doing the same thing. Germany sort of start running up these debts because it's also determined to spend money on military. They don't have the money. And so that's why the only resort that Merz has is that, well, our welfare system is unsustainable, but your Ukraine policy is sustainable. So it's like, so that's their resort is that, we have to cut welfare, but we need to maintain our commitment to Ukraine. We've got to send this ridiculous coalition of the willing force into Ukraine.
Well, if the circumstances were different, if all of these governments had surpluses
You're
and
right.
they're adding on to another
Right.
vacation
Right.
day, and we'll pay you to graduate from university,
Right.
all these little perks, and we're going to spend money on Ukraine. Most people say,
Right.
whatever, okay,
Right.
but
No,
it's
no,
not the case. It's
it,
not the case.
it is not the case. And then she says, President Trump reassured us that there will be an American present as part of the backstop. They keep
Well,
repeating this. He really didn't reassure anyone.
see,
That was
this is,
very clear and repeatedly affirmed. That was not
but
very clear. It was not
this is
repeatedly affirmed.
George. This is the Financial Times, right?
This is a Financial Times, yeah.
This is again peak dishonesty. You and I could Google it right now. What was the White House's
Right,
response was what Trump said
right,
on Truth Social, et cetera, et
right,
cetera. She's talking out of her, you know what? Okay. And the Financial Times, it's incumbent upon them. However, blah, blah,
right.
blah, blah, blah. But they won't do that.
No, no, that's right. The troops are said to include potentially tens of thousands of European-led personnel backed by assistance from the US, including command and control system and intelligence and surveillance assets. That arrangement was agreed at a meeting between Trump, Zelensky, and senior European leaders last month. They keep saying this. This was agreed. That was agreed. Is there a written document where which states this agreement? Those who met Trump in Washington are expected to gather in Paris on Thursday. Of course
Oh,
they are.
God. Another one.
In other media, at the invitation of France's President Emmanuel Macron to continue at the high level discussions. Three diplomats briefed on the plan.
If
Told
they
the
were so concerned about the cost of, their budget crisis, why don't you just do a Zoom call? It's true.
It's very true. It really is. Because, of course, when you go on these trips, you have to bring a whole entourage. I mean, they don't just go by themselves. They have the speech writers, their spokesman, they have national security advisors. So every leader goes there with a big, big entourage. So it's all very expensive. And then of course the usual crowd, and then said last week defense chiefs from the so-called coalition of the willing met and had worked out pretty precise plans for the, um, and then she says, of course, it always needs the political decision of the respective country because deploying troops is one of the most important sovereign decisions of the nation. But the sense of urgency is very high. It's moving forward. It's really taking shape. And then she says,
Very much
um,
like her COVID policy. Yeah, yeah.
yes, yes, which she still has never really answered for.
No, we never really got that the clear.
We never got clear, that very shady deals that she signed with Pfizer.
Apparently, the communications accidentally were destroyed.
Yes, that's right. Sorry. Whoops.
All right, somebody deleted it. IT,
Yes.
it happens all the time with IT in the UK.
Exactly. But this is where it gets interesting. He says Putin has not changed. He's a predator. So they're all saying, this was
Yeah,
Macron
yeah.
says predator. Then
I think they're on a Telegram group, and they say
yes,
today's word is predator, predator.
that's right. Yeah. So but Macron said predator and ogre, and then Schmerz said, yeah, I agree, predator, ogre. But then she says he's a predator. Trump wants peace, and Putin is not coming to the negotiating table. He has a negative experience with Putin more and more. Putin does not do what he says. But this is where it gets puzzling. She's saying we're going to have these deployments of these with the security guarantees, but he says, well, Putin doesn't want peace. Well, if Putin doesn't want peace, how are you going to deploy these security guarantors? I mean, if there's no peace, then what are they going to be doing there? Are they going to be there, in combat, get shot at? I mean, says, oh,
I know they're going to be. I figured it out, George. This is a deployment to fight for security guarantees.
maybe yes.
That's it. That's it. We're going to Ukraine to fight for security guarantees.
Exactly. This is our fight. This is Europe's fight. But it says Putin is not coming to the negotiating table. So if he's not coming to the negotiation table, then there's no peace. So what are we talking about?
He went to Anchorage.
He went to Anchorage. He has a negative experience with Putin. More and more, Putin does not do what he says. And this is the point at which any journalist would ask, but I don't understand, Madam President. How are you going to put in your forces if there's no peace? I mean, what are they going to be doing there? Are they actually going to be involved in combat? I mean, is that the plan? Because the idea was that this would be a security guarantee after the war. They said, oh, no. Putin's not coming to the negotiation table. And so that's Ursula von der Leyen.
The security guarantees war. That's what we'll call it. Okay.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
yes.
It is being floated in legacy media that the UK and France may have to approach the IMF for a bailout.
Yes, that's right. They both may do so. That's always very painful because then the IMF comes in, and I guess it's a way of evading responsibility because you say, well, we got to impose these kinds of these draconian cuts because the IMF says so. You don't argue with the IMF.
I'm sorry, the elderly will freeze this winter. Not my fault.
Not my fault. Take it up with the IMF. Sorry, with the IMF. The boys from the IMF, these tough guys. You got to do this, and this. Oh, yes. The Britain's Labour government did this in 1976 when it borrowed money from the IMF and said, sorry, I mean, there's nothing I can do. It's the IMF did so. I mean, Dennis Healey, he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer at the time. You had the left, which was screaming in rage, "Hey, this is a Labour government. We're in power, and we're imposing these draconian cuts." Well, that was the IMF. It's amazing. You kind of elected governments just hand over power to unelected representatives.
Well, I mean, at least in the case of Macron, it'll free him up to go to more meetings about.
Yes. So then the other day, there was, if you remember, Mario Draghi. Another one.
household name. He's been around for. He goes back to the Roman times, I think.
Now, Mario Draghi is one of these characters who always holds these big jobs and big positions, never been elected to anything, and yet he gets to be prime minister. Um, and I mean, he was the president of the European Central Bank, and one of his jobs as president of European Central Banks was to oust governments he didn't like. I mean, that's what central banks do. So, when it came to Berlusconi, basically, I mean, they're very good at this. The central bankers, so they say they're going to just keep raising the borrowing costs, and then the government falls because they say we can't pay this. I mean, we've got this huge debt, and the only with these kinds of interest rates, there's no way we can pay this debt, and that end of Berlusconi. And that's what Mario Draghi has been doing. And then he was shipped in. You remember he was shipped in a couple of years ago after Salvini, or just torpedo the government and so. But Mario Draghi gave this big speech the other day. EU is in a state of crisis. But the amazing thing is that he has no recommendations other than let's continue doing everything that we've been doing. I mean, it's like that, steady as she goes. So what's the point of coming up with a statement of this in crisis? But everything he does always meets with this enormous approval. Yes, Mario Draghi has given shows that he's a serious thinker on geopolitics. So here's just a little bit of that speech that he gave. I mean, it's very tedious, so we don't have to look at it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. For years, the European Union believed that its economic size, with 450 million consumers, brought with it geopolitical power and influence in international trade relations. This year will be remembered as the year this illusion.
Oh, this year.
This year, exactly.
Okay.
This year, that's an illusion. But because he never really asked himself, well, how did it come about that you've created this super state of sorts, and yet it has now less influence than ever? I mean, when you at least had the states, individual states that ran their own foreign policy, then they actually had more power than the EU has. It never addresses that. We had to resign ourselves to the tariffs imposed by our largest trading partner, long-standing ally, the United States. We were pressured by the same ally to increase military spending, a decision we perhaps should have made anyway, but in ways and forms that likely do not reflect Europe's interests.
Okay, after 2 points, no recommendations.
No, that's right. And then the European Union, despite having contributed the most to the war in Ukraine and having the greatest interest in a just peace, has so far played a relatively marginal role in the peace negotiations.
Because they want peace.
Exactly. See, this is what he says these things and never really addresses them. If Europe is having these economic problems, you mean, could it be that cutting yourself off from cheap energy from Russia may have played a role in the economic problems of the EU?
Just spitballing, yep.
That's, yeah. That then rants again about China, and it says Europe has also been a bystander as Iranian nuclear sites were bombed and the massacre in Gaza intensified. Well, he was a bystander because he was a bystander. I mean, you can't just say, "Oh, he was a bystander." Well, you didn't have an independent foreign policy. That's why.
But Draghi is the architect.
Exactly. That's the point. He more than anyone else is the architect. He gets to be a prime minister without having won a single vote. And then says, there says that these events have shattered any illusion that economic power alone ensures any form of geopolitical power. It is therefore not surprising that skepticism towards Europe has reached new heights. But it's important to ask what the real object of the skepticism is. And then, in my opinion, this is not skepticism about the values on which the European Union was founded. Democracy, peace, freedom, independence, sovereignty, prosperity, and fairness. You haven't done any of those. I mean, not one of those things.
All of them have been degraded.
Yes, exactly. That, if you want to ask, why is the European Union becoming increasingly irrelevant because all of those things that you have just listed, European Union doesn't do anything to defend. It's against democracy. It's against peace. There's no freedom. There's no independence, and there's no sovereignty, and there's no prosperity.
Let alone fairness.
Let alone fairness. Even those who argue that Ukraine should surrender to Russia's demands would never accept the same fate for their country. They too value freedom, independence, and peace, even if only for themselves. Even only for themselves. I believe rather that the skepticism concerns the European Union's ability to defend those values. Yeah, because it doesn't make any effort.
See, George, we talked about this. I think it was yesterday. If you're going to justify and legitimize every policy decision you make based on your values, you're in a dead end. Okay, because we could go on until we're both blue in the face and our viewers are blue in the face. How that is antithetical. When you talk values, you're talking anti-values.
That's right. That's right. But it's very interesting because, in a way, he kind of gives the game away by when he starts over. Oh, well, these are our values, and you say, yeah, okay. If they are your values, where is European Union and peace? You're fueling war. Democracy, you're just canceling elections that you don't like. Freedom. I mean, every day you're cracking down more and more on media expression.
Yeah, go through an international airport. Is your phone going to be the demand to look at your phone?
Yeah.
Is that freedom?
Exactly. They're going to look exactly. Exactly. And then speaking of freedom and independence, the Republika Srpska, which is again a big European Union project, the Republika Srpska, which is one half of the artificial state that was created at Dayton. So they've now removed the legally elected president of the Republika Srpska. He's no longer the president now. It's Milorad Dodik, and they're going to hold elections. Now, what's actually kind of interesting about this election is that, of course, there's no minimum for how many people need to vote. So Dodik, who has been removed from the presidency, said, we're going to boycott this election. Great. The EU and NATO says, fantastic. You go ahead and boycott. We only need 2 people to vote.
That's right.
And that's it. We've got an election. We have a new president.
Yes, they're going for the Austrian foreign minister formula. Yes,
exactly. And so it's we are on the brink of the EU getting NATO getting their wish in Bosnia and Herzegovina, because they're going to get some toady, some Pashinyan-like figure who's going to get 2 votes in the Republika Srpska, and then that's it. He's the legal, legitimate president, and he will do what NATO wants, which is basically end.
Well, he may be
of the Republika Srpska.
He may be legal, but he won't be legitimate, and that's the problem.
Well, that's right, exactly, and that's where it gets interesting as to, well, how would the Serbs react? So the problem is for Dodik is that in a way he has left it a little late. I mean, he should have done all these things a long time ago, and he was obviously set up by the Office of the High Representative, so the High Commissioner of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And so there's going to be this snap election on November the 23rd. And then it says, after Milorad Dodik's mandate was canceled, and he was banned from holding political office for 6 years.
Look at that wonderful passive voice.
Yes.
Look at that. That's how propaganda works.
That's right.
His mandate was canceled.
That's right.
Just out of the sky, it was canceled. George.
Canceled. It was just these things happen. I mean, things get canceled. Yeah. Your library card gets canceled. Dodik, who is refusing to step down, said earlier this month that the Serb Republic will prevent elections by any means necessary in what is the latest stage in this tug of war. And then he says, last week, Parliament of the Serb Republic scheduled a referendum on the issue for October the 25th. The vote will ask Bosnian Serbs if they accept decisions made by the unelected foreigner Christian Schmidt and the verdicts of Bosnia's non-constitutional court made against the president of the Serb Republic, as well as the Election Commission's decision to revoke the mandate of a Serb Republic President Dodik. But the problem is that we know how that referendum will go, and the EU and Christian Smith said, "Well, we don't recognize it. We don't care." Yeah, but so 98% of the Serbs voted this way. We don't care. There is no legitimacy. Some guy gets elected by 2 votes. That's legitimate.
And this is all very, very dangerous.
Of course it is. And so it says Schmidt is in charge of overseeing the implementation of a peace accord that ended the war in 1995. No, he's in violation of all of the agreements that were signed in 1995, but that's typical of media misreporting. If the referendum outcome is not recognized within a reasonable time, the Serb Republic will hold a referendum on independence within 90 days, Dodik said earlier this month. The problem is they may well hold that vote, but by then, Dodik is not president anymore. As far as the, internationally, because we don't care how this vote went. Yeah, I'm sure they'll vote overwhelmingly to secede, but it won't have any legal standing unless they go ahead with it. But that does raise the possibility of a NATO intervention. If they seriously move towards secession. The Serb Republic, blah blah blah, and so on. So that's a kind of nicely bubbling along.
Well, we predicted this. We've been watching this every step of the way.
Yeah.
It's basically put up or shut up, and both sides are playing this, and it ends badly.
Yeah,
it ends badly.
Of course. So
let's go to coalition of the willing. There, who's going to do that? Okay, yeah. Germans will. Oh yeah.
Well, the thing is that's right. But you see, it's one thing to take on the Serbs. They can say, "Hey, we can take the Serbs." It's like well, I know about Russia. That's a different order of business. But if it's the Serbs, that's a small country. We can absolutely pummel the Serbs. We showed that.
We need a win, George.
Exactly. That's going to be a nice one. It's like
we need a win.
We can just beat boom, 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 boom. That's an easy one. Anyway, let's take a look at some of our Gagglers on our locals page, and. Cynthia, always very good to see you. Cynthia, thank you so much for your generosity. I really appreciate it. So Cynthia says, an Iranian news reporter named Ehsan Safarnejad was on Kevork Almasyan's show the other day. He's a bit of an Iran skeptic, if you will. In fact, he believes that an inside soft coup may indeed be forming from within the government of Iran, mostly by the pro-Azeri faction. His take on this is rather complex and convoluted. Kevork even made a comment about that, but it's still very interesting take nonetheless. So perhaps you can have him on the Gaggle as a guest sometimes. That's an excellent suggestion. Well, I think we had Kevork on a few weeks ago, and we discussed Iran, and he and I think we were in agreement. He takes a very pessimistic view of Iran's prospects. He said Iran's got a real issue there. It's got, and Azerbaijan is really the problem there, because now Azerbaijan is in with Turkey, it's in with the United States, and with the building, if that comes about, will come about this through this creation of this transport infrastructure and the Zangezur corridor. Iran is essentially going to be surrounded. It's really quite isolated. It's lost its ally Syria. It's looking like it's going to lose its ally Hezbollah. Hezbollah is now being disarmed. So I think Iran is in a very tight spot right now.
Yeah, I've heard arguments on both sides of that one, and both have compelling points, I have to admit. But my default position, and looking at Iran, very much how I look at Russia. Russia is never as strong as you think it is. It's never as weak as you think it is. And I kind of keep a middle ground on that. It's really interesting on the topic of Iran because you have these different positions and they're very polarized. Okay, we don't usually have a situation like that. It's most people go, it's kind of nuanced. Okay, but on this one, I don't know if George, did you hear um, that news report coming out of Iran, which was dismissed by the Russians and the Iranians quickly.
Yes, I
I'm not
did.
sure
Yeah, okay, yeah, I did
that
see that. Yeah,
the Russians had given the
that's
Israelis
right. Yeah,
intelligence, which again, this went, this is part obviously of a propaganda offensive going on here,
great.
but it does bring up, what kind of relationship does Russia and Iran have? Okay, because you can get a lot of different views on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, yeah, that's right. And I think this could well be a disinformation operation, because ultimately at the moment, you know, Iran is pretty isolated. Russia is essentially its one ally in the world, and therefore creating problems between Russia and Iran. That makes that whoever wants to do it, whoever wants to create friction between Russia and Iran, they're playing a shrewd geopolitical game. I have to say, I doubted that story. I didn't see any reason why Russia would want to help Israel against Iran. I didn't see the logic of that. I mean, so it just it didn't make a great deal of sense. But it caused some friction. I mean, that's why Russia had to deny this, and
And
then of
that
course,
was the point.
yeah,
That was the
exactly,
point.
yeah. And then the Iranian government said this is not the Iranian government is not making this claim. Um, uh, but we talked the other day about the United Nations. So the United Nations, those sanctions are going to snap back in place in I guess it'll be in October. Now, what I think is interesting is that the Russians are saying now that this is not legitimate. That what the UN Security Council is going to do, even if the sanctions go back in place, it's not legitimate because the according to the terms of the JCPOA, the E3 powers should have used the dispute resolution mechanism. So in other words, hey, if you have a problem with what Iran is doing, then you have to avail yourself of the dispute resolution mechanism. You don't just go straight to the
And they said they
snapback.
would.
Yeah,
When Trump left the
right.
JCPOA, they said they would. They never followed up on it.
That's right. So if that's the case, then if the sanctions do snap back in place, then I think Russia will say, well, these are not legitimate sanctions, and therefore the Russia will continue to do business with Iran. So they will continue to trade with Iran, and and then China will also presumably will continue to trade with Iran, and therefore they will continue to provide. And this is important. They're going to need continue to provide Iran with arms because that's the key. Because if Russia says, well, these are sanctions, we can't go on providing arms to Iran, then of course Iran makes Iran very vulnerable because there's no question Israel and the United States are planning their next
Of course.
attack against Iran.
Yeah, and again, George and I have always talked about how the West walks away from diplomacy. A few months ago, before the attack on Iran by the United States, they were in negotiations.
Yeah,
Okay, I mean, it just it beggars the mind. Okay, I mean, who is the aggressor here?
right.
And and of course, we knew all the way back during the 12-day war that the snapback, the sanctions are going to come into effect. What has the Europeans done? No, they've actually forced the issue instead of saying, hey, we got to stand back here.
Right, right.
No, it's just the opposite. Just
It's
the
just the
opposite.
opposite. Yeah, it's very interesting. There was an article by Trita Parsi on this very subject in responsible statecraft, and he said, well, the European position on Iran has changed since over the past 10 years. They now regard Iran as an enemy, which they didn't in 2015 because they see Iran as an ally of Russia's. They're so filled with this hatred for Russia that they now regard Iran as an ally of Russia's, and they don't really do that much business any longer with Iran. And this is an easy one for Europe to suck up to Trump. They're always looking for ways to
Exactly.
suck up to Trump. And so that's why this isn't the Europe of 2015. They to them, they said, great, hey, this is an easy one. We can just
Yeah,
bash Iran.
snapback sanctions. Well, I mean, against what? There's almost virtually no trade. Okay,
Right.
I mean, this is just a performative. This is theater. And George
Right.
is absolutely right. As we saw the Australians, the to because the populace of Australia is protesting the genocide in Gaza, and so the Australian government comes out and we condemn Iran. Okay, and this is exactly what the Europeans are doing. Okay, but we condemn Iran because they want to keep on Trump's good side.
Yes, exactly. Because it's an easy one. So I think, but I think that's the crucial thing. I mean, because Iran really needs every defense, every means of defending itself that it can. I think Russia is going to play a role there. And so if Russia says these are illegitimate, these sanctions, because the E3 and the United States, well, the United States is no longer part of the JCPOA, but the E3 did not go through the dispute resolution mechanism. Therefore, they are in violation of the JCPOA. Therefore, the snapback has no legal validity. If that's going to be the Russian position, then I think that's good news for Iran.
Yeah, but Iran has dithered.
Yeah,
Okay, it
yeah,
dithers, and that's on them. Okay, maybe we'll get an agreement. Maybe maybe the Europeans
yeah.
will come. No, this is what I don't like this. The reformers. I don't understand. I think it's a trap to get into that kind of typology for Iranian politics because so
Right.
many people told me so many other nuances here. But the reformists, they're still holding out. No, in July it was the dry run for a regime change. Don't you get it?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's ridiculous. After all these years, after all these decades, you're still playing this game. I mean, it's always a trap. They're always laying a trap for you. That's what they do. That's what the West does. It's very good at doing it. It's laying a trap for you, and then at some point the trap is snapped. And
Just
so
like
that's
what George said about the Republic.
exactly, exactly.
That's a trap. It's a
It's a
trap.
trap. They snap the trap. They snap it shut, and then yeah, boom. You got a completely phony baloney election.
Look,
And
look, you had in December to January up to February of 2022. The OSCE itself reported
yeah,
that
yeah,
Ukrainian forces had ramped up their attacks onto the Donbass. Okay,
right,
it was a trap, and
right.
everyone's like, "Yay, the Russians fell for the trap! Yay!" How did that help
Yep,
Ukraine?
that's right. Exactly. Anyway, Cynthia goes on, and then oh yeah, there's a link to it, and then it says there are two other Iran skeptics who would be interesting to have on the Gaggle as well. They both hold similar views to Ihsan Safanijad. The first one is an Armenian reporter podcast by the name of Hovik Manucharian, who also recently was also recently in Kevork Sports, and then the other one is an Iranian reporter by the name of Hamid Bahrami, who's okay. Okay, that sounds good. Thank you, Cynthia, for those suggestions. Those good suggestions. And
It's
then
really good to know some of our viewers do a real deep dive like we like to
absolutely,
do.
absolutely, it's really
Really
great.
amazing. Kudos.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Kudos, Cynthia. And then here we have Richard Phillips says, didn't the USA do this development scam in Haiti? And he did absolutely nothing for the local people. That's going back to the Gaza Largo thing. Yeah, I don't think it is a scam. I mean, that's
Well, no,
exactly.
I think the
Some people
Gaza
can make money.
Largo,
I mean, I think yeah, but certainly not.
Gaza Largo is a media fraud. Okay, right now,
Right.
but what they did to Haiti was real.
Yeah.
They utterly
Yeah.
destroyed the place, and there
Right.
was a lot of people. Take a look at the Clinton Global Initiative. They went to the bank on that one.
Yeah.
Bank.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Um, And but yeah, exactly. They made a lot of money. That's right. And then R. Brown, 1958, says, "Imagine the Keystone Cops having several hundred ICBM. That's the EU. The EU will escalate by deploying the armed wing of the Ministry of Silly Walks to eastern Ukraine." Peter, I think you remember the Ministry of Silly Walks from Monty Python.
Hang on, everyone, just for a second, since it's been brought up.
To
That's
make the
that's my wall clock. Ministry of Silly Walks. And when you let's see if I can do it with one eye.
oh well, that was it. The Cleese had that. He has that lanky build, and so he was just very good at doing those silly walks.
That's
Yes,
I love timepieces, and this is the only timepiece I have on my wall.
So the Minister of Silly walks to eastern Ukraine to make the Russian army collapse from uncontrollably laughing their butts off. So I think that's another Monty Python skit. I think which was one of their best. I don't know if you remember that one about the secret British weapon of World War II that ultimately won World War II was a joke that was so funny
It was so
that
funny that no one could read it in its
no one could
entirety.
read it without just laughing to death.
It was written in fragments and passed on.
That's right, but I mean, it was done in this kind of documentary form. This is a BBC documentary about the jokes so lethal, that everybody died from laughter.
Only those guys could do it.
That was it has to be that was I think their best skit. So anyway,
George and I were, for me, I sound like an old man, but that was a golden age of just amazing humor.
yeah.
And again, that was when I was growing up, in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado, and then later in Southern California, coming across Monty Python was just like an epiphany. We just had no idea about another country's sense of humor, and we loved it. We didn't understand all of it,
No,
and then
no.
somebody came up with the Monty Python anthology, and then that's what a Mac means, a raincoat. Okay,
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
because we didn't understand all the slang. Okay,
No,
but we
no.
certainly understood the
That's right.
poking of power, and
That's
that's
right.
what it was all.
And some of it is very British. Like you wouldn't be familiar, like with the kind of nuances of the BBC accents, and BBC shows, sport, the BBC kind of obsession with sport, and so on. And so some of it is very, very British, but
And,
um,
and, and, and the whole thing about the Queen, like, what's
yeah,
this all about? The Queen will be watching it at 14 minutes after the hour, and then they had the full frontal nudity stuff, which
that's it. Yes.
for young teenagers, oh my God, that's on TV, okay? Because it was put on public broadcasting, so they didn't really control that. They bought it and they put it on, and
Right.
it's like, oh my
Yeah,
God,
but
you can see tits on TV. It's amazing.
that except for Orban and Fico, there are no serious leaders in Europe, just useful idiot. The DNA of Europe hasn't changed in a millennium. War. Just needs someone else to pay for it. It's very interesting. You're absolutely right. I mean, when we went through these von der Leyen and Schmerz, and then of course before we had Annalena Baerbock, and all the rest, and it is a strange thing that after all the terrible things of the 20th century, you thought that's a Europe and we'll never do this again. And it does look as if, hey,
Who's the author?
deja vu all over again.
Kennedy, the rise and decline of great powers.
That's right. Yeah. The rise and fall of the
he
great.
gets Russia wrong. He got Russia wrong.
Right.
The essence of what his thesis about European politics is exactly as what our viewer wrote. It's absolutely right.
Yeah, and he says there very nicely, love the banter, good humor when dealing with the craziness of our times is essential to maintaining sanity. Thank you very much, R. Brown, 1958. That's very appreciate your kind words. And so, I mean, this is it. We're coming to an end on this special bank holiday. Well, actually, I mean, I still use the term bank holiday, but a kind of special Labor Day edition. And it's kind of exciting that on Thursday there'll be another meeting of the Coalition of the Willing in Paris. I mean, that's going to be
I'll,
really interesting.
I'll tell you, these clowns just give it. It's like a traveling circus. Okay,
Yeah,
an endless amount of material. Jeez.
yeah. Maybe they just like going to Paris. I think that because Macron just lays on very good food. I mean, it's like because I think you've got a lot of problems on your plate. I mean, each of
I
these
think
countries.
he's trying to impress the misses, if I can use that. They like me. They like me. They come and visit me.
Yeah,
See, somebody likes me. The French people hate me, of course. Okay, his spouse hates him, but you can always count on Merz to show up.
that's
Okay,
exactly that's to show. Historically unpopular. Macron, the second government is about to fall. Within a year. Quite an accomplishment. And then, of course, Keir Starmer also historic lows in unpopularity. With Nigel Farage,
with a haircut
riding
like
high in
that,
the polls.
with a haircut like that, what do you expect? Come on.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody who had joined us. Really appreciate that. Thank you for all of your questions, and thank you for the Ministry of Silly Walks, and for the contributions to keep the dogs more or less content. Not always, but so we'll be back next Monday with a joint live stream, and then you can join me tomorrow. I hope you do at on Tuesday, which is 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, all the best. Bye bye. Good night. And we're out.
Did you forget it was Labor Day? I did. I
No, I
seriously
didn't
did.
forget it was Labor Day. No, no. It's when American holidays I always remember. It's Hungarian holidays I have difficulties
Thank you,
remembering.
George. I've been here for over a quarter century. I still don't remember Russian holidays.
No, it's very difficult. Exactly. There's all the Hungarian, it's very difficult. It's like, like August the 20th, October the 23rd, March the 15th. Often I completely forget. But I
Yeah,
always in America, July the 4th. I mean, there aren't many of them, but July the 4th, and Labor Day, and then of course Memorial Day. And there's Veterans Day. I mean, so, but the other holidays I don't remember. Yeah.
all right. Good luck tomorrow. I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Okay. Bye bye.